what was it, 37, 34 or something like that?
Yeah.
So they're going to have to score some points, and they're going to have to start fast. And I think Brian Hoyer looked good when he got going. He's like the proverbial little girl with the curl. When he's good, he's very good. But when he's not good, he's not very good. And so that's the one thing they have to address. I think the pass rush, without games and, without stunts, without blitzes, is another thing that they're going to have to adjust. Maybe they play lighter, faster guys instead of those big, fat defensive tackles at the ends. I don't know. Because if they're going to play man-to-man defense, if they're going to use Justin Gilbert and Joe Hayden as supreme stoppers on the defense, then they can't be holding 8, 9, 10, 5 seconds on these superior defensive backs that you can impede in any way. So I think that the pass rush is going to have to come along right now, not next week, not in a month. It's going to have to be readily apparent on Sunday at 1 o'clock against the excellent future Hall of Fame Drew Brees, Jimmy Graham, Marcus Colston, the new toy they have, and their rookie from Oregon State, whose name escapes me now.
Cooks.
But they've got weapons.
Yeah,
Brandon Cooks.
Yep.
They've got weapons, no doubt. And then the final thing that the Cleveland Browns are going to have to do on Sunday is I think they're going to have to tackle well. And all this coming out of Pittsburgh, they didn't tackle well in spurts on last week. But this week they're going to have to tackle well. They're going to have to be angry, aggressive, physical, Cleveland Browns style football. If they do that, they'll have a chance to win. I don't think they win. I think this is that they've had in their renaissance, and they still are going to have to play almost the perfect game to win.
You know what? I agree with a lot of what you said. You mentioned at the end the tackling, so let's talk about it, because it was two halves, and you could look at the second half and get hope, and if you weren't playing the Saints this weekend, it would give you maybe more hope, because that's such a high-level offense and a team that you're playing. But look at the first half by itself. You've watched a ton of football. I'm curious, what do you chalk up the sloppy tackling and just the malaise that they spent the first half in? I know you've got a lot of young guys, and I know some of those guys you can chalk it up to first legitimate game and catching up to the speed and all of that. I get that part of it, but that doesn't apply to everybody that played. I mean, what do you chalk it up to there? Is it coaching? Is it players? Is it a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a little bit of everything. I'm not overly impressed with the coaching on either side of the football. It doesn't scream progressive, new techniques that are proven. It doesn't strike me as we're going to use our players in the best way possible. And I'm going to suggest this to you. If you got the new John Madden football game, and you sat down and played, and you took the Cleveland Browns, and you played Ray Farmer, okay? And you mixed and matched and put a roster together, and you put lineups together, I doubt very seriously if you would deploy Taba Rubin and Phil Taylor as ends at any point. And at any point. And if you play a 3-4 defense, you pretty much have to deploy those players that way. When it's obvious to everybody watching, Phil Taylor should be over the center, but right next to him should be a Taba Rubin, because if you clog up that middle, if you get penetration, then it all funnels either to your linebackers or to your ends. Now, the left end, who is the stereotypical run-stopping defensive end, unless you have four pass Dwight White, Joe Green, Ernie Holmes, but you have that, then the left end is your stereotypical run stuffer, like Calais Campbell, like J.J. Watt. But J.J. Watt happens to be more like the Steeler guys than a stereotypical left end. But the point I'm making, left ends stop the run. They give you a little bit of the pass rush. They're extremely physically strong. And then on the right side, you have a beast. You have somebody that you can't hope to block. And on the right, the quarterback's blind side, giving the offense trouble. Well, when you have a defense that's formulated that way and you have good linebacker play, then you can really deploy the type of pressing, man-on-man defensive backs that the Browns have now. The way the Browns' defense now, in my opinion, is kind of uneven. But the Browns are playing three big, fat guys in the middle, and their ends are slow and big and fat. And then they got one guy, when I say fat, I don't mean fat, I mean bigger than live guys, smaller guys, JPP and guys like that. Speed off the edge, speed and power, because you need that to get to the passer. So I think that the Browns suffer from a lack of intelligent design. And so if you figure out how to get to the passer with and Desmond Bryant, I'm going, because those guys apply some pressure. Those guys are stout at the line of scrimmage, very strong, but they're not pass rushers. And any good defense, you can't show me a good, an excellent defense that doesn't. Browns have to develop those things if the overall team is going to be as healthy as they want it to be.
That's one of the things, we've mentioned his name before, but of all those guys, you got some stout guys, some run-stopping guys, but Armani Bryant, was the one guy that showed flashes where I said, man, this guy just seems to have a knack more than the others for getting into the backfield, getting after the quarterback. That's why he really intrigued me, and I'm sure we'll see him mixed in there at some point. You got to see him continue to mix and match, but on the back end of that, as you talk about, with the lack of pressure, it puts more pressure on the DBs and back there. Where are you at on Justin Gilbert? We've heard this week, and already Mike Pettin learning the ups and downs of being a rookie coach and speaking too early sometimes, because it never fails that as soon as you get done saying we're going to rearrange the snaps here on defense, we're going to use some of the depth in the backfield, the next day they release Aaron Berry, which was one of the guys that he mentioned as get back step a little bit. But the reality is reps of Gilbert back there, because clearly, Roethlisberger, and that's what a vet's going to do. They're going to find rookies. They're going to go after guys, and they did go after, completely shield him. You tell me if you agree, because he's got to learn under fire. But at the same time, like Mike Pettin said, that's one of the positions that can beat you just like that in the game. So you got to temper that learning curve with not costing your team victories as well. Where are you at with the early development or lack of with Justin Gilbert?
It's kind of early to be criticizing or giving kudos to Justin Gilbert. I would guess that if he doesn't hurt the Cleveland Browns, he's in a good place going forward. But I honestly believe that Justin Gilbert is going to be a guy that the Browns come to rely on. And when you get two outside linebackers, two defensive ends, two receivers, two cornerbacks, two safeties, both physical, fast, they got bad intentions, they're talented, they're skillful. When you have two of those guys, you're in pretty good shape. And it looks like Gilbert has those qualities. I would guess we will more be able to fairly give an assessment of Gilbert's opportunities going forward, probably after the bye. Let Gilbert get some games under his belt, because remember, he was hurt in the preseason, couldn't play. So let's let him get a few games under his belt, get past the bye, and probably about mid-season, probably about week 8, week 9, ask me that question again, and I'll see how he's done over a longer period of time. But I really couldn't make that assessment now, other than to say I believe he can play.
And you know what? It's funny, thinking back, and a lot of you guys listening, I remind you of going back to Buster Screen and a young Buster Screen and how, I mean, he got toasted. We all know. He was under fire. Teams were going after him. He was thrown in there kind of unprepared. But look back. Remember this before he got hurt in the training camp this year. He was one of the biggest ones that people would say that's one of the biggest improvements, one of the guys that's come the furthest, that's come along. And I know the difference is the pedigree. It's where a guy is drafted. There's obviously less patience and more people want to go right after the guy that was taken early in the draft. But I think back to Buster Screen and how many I know just based off of just the fans of Twitter and Facebook and the reaction that we get, if you could have cut Buster Screen there's many times that he wouldn't have been on the Browns roster had Twitter been in charge of who gets to stay and who gets to go. But he improved. That being under fire, we've watched him grow and get better. He's still got a lot of growth to do. And I'm with you. That shows you, though, so many times people think that a guy is static when they hit the NFL. What they are is what they are, and they're never going to change. And I've never understood that mindset, because if that's the case, then why do we coach anybody? You know, like, of course that's not true, but so many people look at guys like they're just static, and what they are is what they are, and that's so not true.
Yeah, I think in trying to too early in the game, Justin Gilbert can play, and if we look at it in that light, I think the key thing is come along. How will he be coached? How can he develop his skills to the degree where he's one of the best cornerbacks in the game? And that, I think that's what's most important.
You're listening to the Sports Fix, the BSK Kendall Lewis with us here. We're talking about the Browns kind of coming out of Pittsburgh and heading into the home opener with the Saints. On the other side of the ball, Kendall, looking at the defensive side, flip it around. Obviously, one of the big question marks was going to be the wide receiver position and who was going to step up, or would any of them be able to play. One game, limited sample size. What is your takeaway from what we did see from the wide receivers, especially in the second half as the play action got working, which is, of course, because the running game was rolling, and we'll get to that in a minute. But wide receivers, did anything surprise you there? I know a lot of people thought they'd be lucky to complete a pass to a wide receiver.
Yeah, it was kind of surprising that they got good production out of the guys who caught the football, and I think the Cleveland Browns are going to continue to try to shoehorn some good play out of the wide receivers in. I'm not very impressed with Andrew Hawkins. I don't think his hands are what I would like to have, and when you're talking about not having Josh Gordon and having to rely on Andrew Hawkins, that's a precipitous dip. But I must admit, he played a good game on Sunday. Can that level stay where it is right now? We don't know. But he played a good game on Sunday. I think all the wide receivers acquitted themselves well. The tight ends acquitted themselves well, and that's what it's going to take. It's not about passing the ball, it's about offense, and so they're going to have to run the ball well like they did on Sunday. All three running backs averaged 6 yards a carry. All three running backs blocked well. The fullbacks played well. Once they got going, they played very well on offense. I thought it was a good game. Daryl Ryder of 92.3 told me that he felt like the simplification of the offensive game calls, the nomenclature that was used, helped streamline things, helped them get to the line quicker, helped them get into the play quicker. And so that was an important part of what you saw in the second half on Sunday. Now, they have to seize that momentum and see whether or not they can continue it against a very, very tough intractable almost opponent. And Drew Brees is not infallible.